Okay, we are here on WPPM 106.5 in Philadelphia. My name is Larry McGlynn, and I'm here with Denise Clay Murray. Denise, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. This is Hall Monitor, where we discuss local politics, consumer affairs, and much, much more. And Denise, we have a big show tonight.
Yes, we do. We have um, City Council Majority Leader Sherelle Parker, who is going to be talking about a couple of bills that that she's introduced and were part of a hearing that was broadcast on City Council yesterday. We're also going to have um, and I knew my phone was going to Vanessa Simpson, who is the founder and CEO of the Event Spot, who testified when regarding one of these bills, and we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming legislation that's going on in council, and maybe, just maybe, we may even sneak in a little bit of, hey, what are you hearing about the 2023 mayor's race? Because that's what we do here.
All right. And so our first guest tonight is Majority Leader Sherelle Parker.
Let me just start by saying good evening to each of you, to Larry, Denise, and Allison. Thank you all so very much for having me. Got to give a special shout out to Vanessa Simpson. Vanessa, I don't know that you knew that when you contacted the 9th District Council person who represented the area where you leased space to start your business, that your calls would end up becoming law in the city of Philadelphia. So I want to thank you so very much for not giving up and working with me.
Okay. What I wanted to start asking you about first is, tell us a little bit about the bill that was discussed during the hearing yesterday, the one that regards leasing spaces, because I didn't even know that this was a problem.
Right. No, Denise, you and I both. I knew it was a problem for people who may purchase, let's say, what is actually a duplex, and they buy it, but they don't know that it was illegally converted. That's something that we see often and we knew about, but this was a whole new animal for us. Bill number 210917, or the Commercial Tenant Protection Bill. I like to refer to it as increasing transparency in a commercial leasing process by requiring property owners or their designees to provide a city-issued guidebook to potential lessees 7 days before a lease can be signed. Sherelle Parker, I don't understand. Why is this a problem? I want you to imagine that you run a business, and let's say it's an event space like Vanessa, and you want to have a place where people can come rent space and do baby showers and weddings, and you see a space is wonderful. You say, okay, this is it. I'm going to sign it. And then after you sign the lease, it's time you're paying your rent. You realize that the property isn't zoned in a manner that would allow you to actually carry out the functions of the business that you actually leased the property in order to carry out. So it was very shocking to learn that it wasn't just Vanessa. Right? When we started talking to people in probably almost every council district throughout the city of Philadelphia, and this had been an issue. And so what we are attempting to do is ensure that this guidebook, a city issued guidebook, that it will provide information about how a business owner can determine the zoning and approve uses of a property, as well as to identify whom they can contact for clarity and or questions. And so I can't wait for you to hear Vanessa's story when she testified in council. And I realized that the owner was still asking her to pay rent in a property that she wasn't even allowed to carry out the functions of the business that she set out to establish. So I'm excited about this. Have to give a special thanks, Denise, Larry, and Allison, just for the record. So you know, you've got to respect the people who do the work. Undoubtedly and unquestionably, I have one of the best teams in the city of Philadelphia. Hillary, Rachel, Kiasha. I mean, they did a yeoman's job on this, and I want to say a special thank you to each of them.
Well, thank you. So what is this bill supposed to do if it's passed?
If it is passed, we will no longer have small business owners like Vanessa, who in essence used her life savings to establish her business, but was not aware that the property she sought to utilize to establish her business, that it wasn't zoned appropriately. And we think that that information, it should be required that the owner of the property, they should give that information to the potential lessee. They should know that in advance. If I say, you know, I want to open up a candy shop and I like that building right there, I've saved my money, and I go and they say it's for rent, and I say, well, I want to rent the building, and I want to open a candy shop. Now the owner knows what I want to do. I've talked about what I want to do, but there was no standard operating procedure on how we could ensure that the potential renter, that they would actually know. I'm looking here now at some other examples. For example, an aspiring baker, they leased a building with a history of commercial use, but it was only to discover after outfitting the property and paying rent for months. That means they made all of the adjustments that they needed to make, spent money, paid rent, and then they needed zoning board approval before they could welcome their customers. And guess what? Their landlord, who did not live in the city of Philadelphia, did not advise them to check the zoning of the property before they signed a lease. So this is in essence to ensure that no potential small business owner can be duped, that no one can be taken advantage of. We're empowering transparency and hopefully strongly encouraging Philadelphia property owners who are renting their space to be forthright and honest about how a property is zoned and what you can and cannot do. And that shouldn't be a burden on people like Vanessa, or the aspiring baker, or the person, for example, a tenant who signed the lease based on their intention to use the backyard of a property for a business. However, they later learned that an overlay prevented it. So then they had to spend an anticipated amount of time and money to obtain approval from the zoning board in order to open. Guess what? The business didn't survive. It closed less than a year later. This bill will ensure that commercial tenants are protected, and it uses the tool of transparency to ensure that they can't be taken advantage of.
Now, the bill was heard. There was a hearing on the bill yesterday. I wasn't able, unfortunately, to hear whether or not it passed out of committee. Did it pass out of committee?
Yes, Denise, you're absolutely right. It passed out, and both of the bills that we introduced passed out. And I think the date is December the 9th that they are scheduled for a vote before the entire City Council of Philadelphia, where it is my hope that it will gain unanimous support.
Okay. Now, I know Vanessa is with us.
Oh, she's
and I wanted to hear a little bit from her about her story and what, I guess, what made you reach out to the councilwoman to try and get this bill to become law in the first place. Tell us a little bit about your experience, and are you still paying rent for this space that you couldn't use?
So you asked me a couple of questions. So first I want to start. I didn't know anything about the bill until recently. And I want to personally thank Councilwoman Parker for initiating it because of what I went through, and I don't want to see any other event venue owners go through that. I worked in corporate America for 30 years in insurance and risk management. I left corporate and in pursuit of the American dream. So I used $40,000 of my own money in search of the perfect location in the city of Philadelphia to open the event venue. I spoke to a lot of property owners, and I, like Councilwoman Parker stated, I advised them exactly what type of business I wanted to open, and every last one of them stated, "Oh, that's fine. We're zoned as a CMX2, as a commercial, so you'll be fine." So that is what I heard. Now, I was still working before I opened my business. And I traveled a lot. So I hired a company that specializes in researching the type of permits and license that you need to open up a business in the city of Philadelphia. For an event venue in the city of Philadelphia, there's a different type of zoning. You have to get a special variance. So the company that I hired was not aware of this. And I was not told that. I actually opened my doors February 2018. I was actually starting to generate business, and I received a cease order from L&I. It started like in October. That's when it started, and it went into effect January 2019. So I was almost in business for an entire year. And then L&I slapped a notice on my door saying that you can't operate because I did not have the proper zoning. And as a result of that, because I've invested the money that I had, and now this was my livelihood, I started reaching out. I reached out to Councilwoman Parker's office, the Chamber of Commerce, L&I, because I was like, what is going on? I have all the paperwork that I need. And unfortunately, I did not. And so I had to literally go through this process of sending out letters to the community, advising them that I had to go before a Borough Home Association to present my business to the community for them to vote it up or down. And mind you, I'd already been in business almost a year. Once that was done, then you have to go through the process of scheduling an appointment to go before the zoning board. And with all of that being said, the lack of workers, the number of workers that they have, and the people, the staff, et cetera, the calendar, it's almost 3 months before you go before them. So now I'm looking at almost 3 months being shut down because I'm waiting to go before the zoning board. And when I finally was able to go before the zoning board, because my business is an LLC, I was required. So before that, let me back up. So all the fees that are associated, filing for the permit, filing for the occupancy, the zoning and all of that costs money. And then because I'm an LLC, I had to, I was mandated to bring an attorney to represent me. I stood before the zoning board for 3 minutes with that attorney. I paid him $800. Mind you, I've been shut down for 3 months. And the type of business that I have, the commercial, it's not the average storefront where you walk in and purchase an item and walk out. My business is by contract. So now, you're opening me up to potential lawsuits because now I couldn't honor, those contracts. So I'm looking at that on top of the money that I, put out to start the business, and then on top of the city of Philadelphia with the additional fees. It was devastating. And because the community is small, like the event venues in Philadelphia, we all talk. So I received a lot of phone calls from other, venue owners going through the same thing that I was going through. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's not right. Property owners, a lot of them are aware that they have a CMX2. So they promote that. when people are coming out to, rent their space or lease their space, so a lot of them are taking advantage of that. And, and they know that, okay, this person signed this lease. Now you're obligated, that now, so regardless, and they know that we didn't have the proper zoning. So they know at some point we're going to be shut down. And there was no law in place to say, okay, well, you no longer have to pay rent. Yes, the property owner at the time, he did attempt to, push that envelope with me, and almost wanted to file for me to be evicted and everything else, as the tenant. Now, because I worked in insurance and risk management, it was a loophole, and I used it to my advantage. But everyone is not as fortunate as that. So I didn't have to pay the rent. Thank God for those 3 months. But there are other venue owners that I know for a fact, that have been shut down, and they had to pay the rent. There's some property owners. Not only this bill is I think it's just a start, of what's happening with some of the property owners. Some people are signing these leases, and these property owners are telling them that you're obligated also to fix the place up before you even move in. So that, and I know that for a fact because I've talked to several venue owners. And one young lady, and just to give an example, she called me. I was on vacation. She was attempting to open up an event venue down the street from where I'm located. And she was about to sign on for $2,500 a month for rent. Also, she was responsible for getting the place up to code. She's not the property. She's not the property owner. Okay. And I told the young lady, I said, absolutely not. You're not the property owner. That's not your responsibility. And she, you know what? She backed away from the deal, and she thanked me because I told her, I said, I was shut down. I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through. That is devastating, and to say the least. And I didn't really get a lot of support from L&I, first and foremost. And then when you go down to 1515 Market Street, a lot of people that work there are not very knowledgeable. So sometimes I was provided with wrong information. So you're going back and forth and just running all over the place. And it's just if the city was going to mandate event venue owners to have to go through this process of obtaining a special variance, then they need to have competent people that are in those positions that can answer questions and clarify things, because that's not right. And a lot of venue owners actually have shut their doors since that. And I have to say this, a lot of venue owners have gone around the process. So they're saying this is an art gallery or this is a studio, just so they can avoid going around getting that proper zoning.
Now, when you found yourself having to be shut down, were there people that had rented the space that
yes.
were impacted by this? Because
yes.
I just had a wedding reception of my own at a small space that sounds a lot like yours. And from what you're describing, that would be a nightmare.
Yes. It really was. And you know what? And because I know several people in the industry, I had to refund money. So not only, I came out of pocket, like I said, when I started my business, I had to refund some money, or a couple of them actually stayed with me and waited until the process was over. So they rescheduled their events. And then on the other side of it, I actually sent them to other venue owners. So where they had to go and have their event elsewhere because I was unable to operate.
Did you have any questions,
Larry? I guess just the main thing, when you're doing any kind of venture, I think the scariest thing are like maybe the unknowns that eventually do sort of pop up, and that happens. But this is not the kind of thing that somebody in your position should have to be dealing with. No. This isn't your fault. This is just, there's all kinds of things that should have been told to you and should have been explained before you did this. Now, starting from where all this began until now, where are you? Is the business back up? Are you getting closer?
Yes. Yes. I you know what? I am fortunate and I am very lucky that I am still I'm still standing at this point, after being shut down. And that was in 18 to 2019, and then COVID hit. So as an event venue owner, we were shut down for almost 7 to 8 months, due to COVID. So I had other means of income that help me. And the property owner, because of what happened and what transpired, he and I have actually established a better rapport, because he saw that, I guess he felt bad. I think initially he didn't even know. He just thought the CMX2 was fine, no problem. And then as the process went on, then, and he backed off of trying to get the rent from me. He understood. And so he has been actually working with me. But a lot of people have not, a lot of venue owners was not as fortunate. Some property owners just pressed the issue. And I know for a fact that other people had to pay rent and while they were shut down as well. But yeah, I'm standing. I mean, at this point, because I have other means of income, and it made me think outside of the box, because I opened up the venue, and I offered decor services initially. So now I have, and due to COVID, it makes you, sit down and think about things. So now I offer the decor services. Initially, it was only at my venue. Now I offer decor services, event planning, and wedding officiant services, and day of coordinator services in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. So outside of my venue, those are the other services that I offer. And that keeps me afloat.
So what are you hoping, um, people get from this bill? That that folks will be better protected, and that you know you won't have to ask as many questions, because the questions that you know have already come up, you'll already have the answers to.
As far as new entrepreneurs, small business owners that are is looking, to pursue the American dream, I in this bill is a start, like I said, because you save your money, you go to your 401 k, or you go to your savings account, or borrow money from your family, and they believe in you, the money that you're and you're stepping out to to start your business. This bill is going to help them not lose their money, because again, I used $40,000 of my own money. I was shut down within a year. So at that point, it could have gone in a totally different direction if I didn't have other income. I would have lost $40,000 and all the inventory and everything else that I started. I mean, because I was operating for almost a year. So I don't want anybody else to go through that. That is a horrible feeling for someone to go through that. And you think, and especially if you think you did your homework, because I hired a company, and the company didn't even know that the city of Philadelphia and has this as policy in place for event venues, because the special variants. I understand the concept, but they also need to streamline and revise that the process that they have in place, because now my special variants, it expires March 1st, 2022. I'm starting the process over again. I just applied for the renewal. It was denied. That was $100 for the denial. Now to appeal it, I have to pay $300 to appeal it. And now, and once I appeal it, then I have to go before the zoning board again and pay another $800 for the attorney to stand there and present my case again for the same zoning permit that I already have. That's already in place.
Why was it denied?
That is the process.
What Vanessa is describing, and I don't want us to demonize this because I'm a district council person, and I also know what it's like to have to deal with nuisance establishments in communities. And so the idea of having to get the special variance, it ensures that the community continues to have a role in deciding what is occurring in their community. But that this bill is about the fact that the owner of that property and the owner of any property in the city of Philadelphia, they should it should be their responsibility to inform a potential renter of what they can and cannot do when renting a property. So if I'm renting this property, it's a commercial space, and I'm telling you what I want to put there, and you're telling me, oh, it's zone CMX2, but you don't know that I need a special a variance in order to operate my establishment. Well, that should be the responsibility of the owner of that property. And the city should ensure that in a very transparent way that I get access to the information that I need so that I can make an informed decision. So just like you heard Vanessa say when she was on vacation, another person who wants to open up an event space called her, with those questions, they should be answered. And that's the purpose of this legislation. And I just want to say to Vanessa, I'm proud of you. Thank you for standing strong. Thank you for continuing to operate a business in the 9th Councilmanic District, because we need that tax revenue. So thank you. So we need those tax dollars to continue functioning in our city. But it's also my job to make sure that you are protected, because I need more of you, more small business owners, not fewer. And that's what this commercial property sort of protection bill will do.
I applaud you. I really do. And I appreciate it. And on behalf of other event venue owners, thank you. We need this.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you, Vanessa, for taking some time out to talk to us about the bill and how it impacted you. And if someone wants to rent your venue, how can they get in contact with you?
They can go onto my website, theeventspotllc.com. They can look us up on Facebook, The Event Spot LLC. They can look us up on Instagram, The Event Spot LLC. Or they can give us a call at area code 215-460-7519.
So Vanessa, now see, thank you so very much. After you gave all of your hot social media handles and your internet connection, right? Your website. Thank you for giving a telephone number for people like me who would be watching this, who want to call, who want to do the old fashioned thing and call and leave a message and say, this is my number. Can you call me back? Thank you for letting me know that that's not out of style.
That is, no. You know what? I try to, I try to get all attract all the audiences, so, you're welcome. No problem.
Well, thank you. Thank you. But that wasn't the only bill that was part of the hearing yesterday. And the other bill that was part of the hearing is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart as somebody who, when I don't feel like cooking and it's during a pandemic, you call for Grubhub or DoorDash and you look at what you are supposed to pay for the meal, and then you see this charge that turns a meal that is normally like $40 for two people into a meal that's $75 for two people. Can you talk a little bit about that bill and what it hopes to do for people who may like to who aren't quite ready to sit down at a restaurant due to the pandemic but don't want to pay like $9 million for DoorDash?
No. And thank you so much for this, Denise. This bill 210670, it in essence builds upon legislation that we passed here in the city of Philadelphia during the COVID-19 pandemic, that in essence, it limited the fees, the maximum fee that third-party food delivery companies, and thank you for naming them, they're familiar to all of us now, Grubhub, DoorDash, and Uber Eats, that they could charge to their partner restaurants. Now, in the midst of the pandemic, restaurants had to learn how to adapt, just like all of us. We could be in the studio right now, but we're doing things, much more virtually now. So they had to figure out a way to adapt. And then this service, that's this third-party food delivery service, maybe before delivery was 15% of your business, but during the hearing, we heard from businesses that said now it's 50 to 60% of their businesses, but they were getting gouged. That restaurants were suddenly subject to delivery fees that went as high as 30 or 40%. Now, if anybody knows anything about the restaurant industry, and I'm a foodie, Denise, I like to go and eat. I like to eat. I like food. I didn't know that the restaurant industry operated on such a thin margin. I'm talking about not even double digits. So the high fees burdened them, and they were already struggling because of the lockdown orders, but they did need to establish an online presence so that they could remain successful. So last year, we capped the fees, 10% for delivery, and we said 5% for other fees like marketing. And so that means you couldn't be charged, the restaurant couldn't be charged for a total of 15% of an order, couldn't go over that. And that would be for the duration of the declared public health emergency and 90 days afterwards. We're still in it. Other cities have introduced this legislation that it would be, in essence, they're implementing permanent fee caps and allowing like for a tier structure. So when crafting this legislation, and you and I have seen each other and interacted, I'm not a gotcha person on either side. But I was hyper-focused about helping the restaurant industry climb out of the pandemic, because I know that even, once we get through Omicron, Delta, and whatever else comes along, they're still not going to be fully recovered. And so what this bill does is that it's going to maintain a clause from the original legislation that clarifies that it is unlawful for a third-party food delivery company to reduce the compensation rates paid to the service delivery drivers, right? Or we would call them, some people call them dashers, if you're talking about DoorDash, or garnish their gratuities as a result of the fee cap. New York, San Francisco, they've all worked on similar legislation. I want to note for the record, be fully transparent, there have been many lawsuits. About this issue. We did want to avoid that. We amended it in committee yesterday. So we're going to maintain our 15% total fee cap for restaurants. But if the restaurants choose, Denise and Larry, they can opt out of that 15% cap, and then they can go into a higher fee tier in return for additional services beyond like the basic delivery and marketing. So I'm real proud of this, Denise. It required the restaurant industry, along with the third-party delivery services firms, to sit down. I'm not a bullhorn. I'm a shout you down, shame you, or guilt you into doing what it's my hope that you will do. I do things the old-fashioned way, and that means you need to bring entities together to sit down and reach much needed compromise. And so we crafted several amendments, and I'm really excited about this legislation. And if in fact any litigation comes as a result of it, I also want to give a shout out to the law department, who said we're ready to rumble if anybody does try to sue, because we've done it different.
Oh, Okay, you're listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5, and I'm Denise Clay. I'm here with Larry McGlynn, and this is Hall Monitor, your weekly trip to Philadelphia City Council chambers, where we talk about what's going on in council and also what's going on in politics. Now, did that bill come out of committee too? And will it be heard next week?
Yes. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Denise.
Okay.
So both of the pieces of legislation, they will they came out of committee unanimously. Let me just say that for the record, there were no votes, and they will go before the entire council for a vote. But I also want to state this, that once this legislation comes before the full council on December the 9th, it is my hope that it will pass. But Denise, you and I have been around. Larry, you've been around long enough to know it's not just about getting the legislation passed. You have to watch how it's implemented. So we're going to be watching the implementation of this new legislation, and I'm going to be on it like a dog on a bone, just so you know. And trust me, we're going to be listening to our restaurants. And as soon as if they tell us something doesn't go right, well, the product that they're offering us at the 15% level, we can't survive. We're going to find a way to go back. And so I'm asking the third-party delivery companies, to work with the restaurants and be fair brokers and honest brokers, because if you're trying to kill our restaurant industry in the city of Philadelphia, which is a food. I just told you I'm a foodie. I like every kind of food from every neighborhood that you can think of. Well, that's a significant part of our economy. They are job creators, and I'm not going to see anybody gouge them. I look at it, I'm a consumer protection person. If you look at my history as a legislator, a lot of the legislation that I've worked on, from predatory lending to just a lot of different issues. A lot of it is centered, with consumer protection in mind. So I'm not going away on this thing. I'm going to be on it. And when I get on something, Sherelle Parker doesn't get off.
Okay. Now, Larry, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to switch gears a little bit, council member. The first thing I'd like to ask you about, you were elected majority leader at the beginning of this term. So for our audience members who may not know, can you tell us a little bit about that role, and then what your philosophy has been in being in that role?
Thank you. So, Larry, I just quickly want to state for the viewing audience that prior to being elected to City Council, I served as a member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives for 10 years in Harrisburg. I represented the 200th Legislative District, and 5 of those years, I served as chair of the Philadelphia delegation. So when we made the transition to the City Council of Philadelphia, I know the importance of teamwork in a legislative body and in developing partnerships and working with the executive branch. And there was an opportunity to become the majority leader. And that simply means that I assist our city council president, Darrell Clark, in the sort of the maintenance of the city council of Philadelphia. And it's a formal operation. So you will notice that while the council president is presiding from the rostrum over city council, when we have to do very formal things relative to our processes, protocols, and procedures, he will call on me to be the person to call up bills, and resolutions. I am a member of all of the committees of the City Council of Philadelphia, and it's really just to help the overall operation of the City Council of Philadelphia. But I do have to give a special shout out to our council president, Darrell Clark, because it could be a ceremonial position if you have a leader that is not inclusive, but that is definitely not the case. Council President Darrell Clark is the president. I'm the majority leader. Council Member Curtis Jones is the whip, and Council Member Mark Squilla is the deputy whip. And so when we are making decisions about processes, protocols, procedures, issues that come up in the City Council of Philadelphia, thankfully, we have a leader like Council President Darrell Clark who pulls in his leadership team so that we can work through those kind of decisions. And so I'm excited to have the opportunity to work with 17 dynamic members who work extremely hard. We don't always agree, on every issue, but we know that everyone's intention is to improve the quality of life for the people of our great city.
And in that role, do you find yourself working with council members to help shepherd legislation through, kind of negotiating behind the scenes a little bit, all those kinds of things?
So yes, you do, and that comes with the territory, right? Not just as the majority leader, but all members will at some time find themselves doing the same thing. Someone has introduced a piece of legislation, and listen, you have to be very clear. It's 17 members of council, but the magic number is 9. The second magic number is 12. I don't care how great your idea is. If you can't get the 9, when I was in Harrisburg, we will say, where is your 102? 203 members of the Pennsylvania House. If you can't get the 102, then it's what you've done could be for naught. And so we definitely work on issues. Sometimes, again, there may be issues that we might agree on and some that we disagree on. So it goes both ways. And so, yeah, that's definitely a part of the job, Larry. It's the sausage making, Larry, that people don't like. People don't like to see it. People don't like to know that it exists, but you do have to work on trying to convince your colleagues, give them sort of a data-driven, research-based, both qualitative and quantitative analysis or a reason about why they should support what you're proffering. And so I enjoy it. And am thankful to work with such an inclusive leadership team, and especially our president.
So we're towards the end of the fall council session right now. The spring session will begin in January. When you look at where we are now in the city in terms of poverty and violence and all the very difficult challenges we've been facing, what do you see as some of the priorities going into the fall, or into the spring, excuse me, particularly when it comes to alleviating poverty in the city?
So for me and what I've heard from my colleagues is that one, relative to our governance, I think very soon, and for the viewing audience, pay attention to the City Council of Philadelphia tomorrow. I think we're going to, have some legislation introduced relative to clarifying our rules and how we function in the City Council of Philadelphia. Again, want to thank our Council President, Darrell Clark, and the entire leadership team and all members for their leadership. But I also think we're going to be focused on putting people on a path to self-sufficiency. All of the disparities that COVID-19 has laid bare for us, as it relates to, our public health, social, economic, those are issues that we need to address right now, but it's also bread and butter issues. People want a safer and a cleaner and a more economically viable city of Philadelphia. And they want what I call, a GPS, right? We can travel anywhere we want in the city of Philadelphia now because all we have to do, is type it in Google and we get that direction. Well, the people in the city of Philadelphia, they want clear direction. They want clear leadership. They want a safer, cleaner, and economically viable city. And I think we're going to see more of that. But let me also say this. I want to be clear. We also not Johnny come lately to many of these issues. We just passed a $400 million neighborhood preservation initiative that, while it includes, funding issues like the building of new affordable housing, but an issue that I'm unapologetically, the advocate for in the City Council of Philadelphia, that's preserving our existing housing stock, because it's much more of an existing housing stock than it is of us building new. And we've got to find a way to assist Philadelphians who have been here long before we began growing, and we've been seeing a population increase. While I'm happy about that, it's not an either or, it's an and. Find a way to grow, continue growing, an inclusive growth, an inclusive economy. But we also have to find a way to support those people who've been Philly strong for years, and they've been sort of the rock of our tax base. And I don't think that's going to go well. That definitely won't go away for me, along with our small businesses and commercial quarters. So I hope you hear a thematic a sort of a theme here in the legislation being introduced and the work being done in the city council of Philadelphia. Selection of a new superintendent is coming. A lot of good work being done in the city of Philadelphia. And although we've reached 500 homicides, it's not going to stop us. Out of crisis comes great opportunity. You're going to hear me talk about community policing. I don't care what anybody has to say. People who live in our neighborhoods, who I talk to, I'm not talking about people who are on the main line. Folks who are on the main line who can tell us what they think we should or should not be doing in our city. I'm talking about the people who live in neighborhoods. They want to be safe. They want to see a police presence in their communities, but they want to see it in a way that we haven't been seeing it. They want their community policing back, their bike patrol officers back, those beat officers walking into a business and signing a log saying, hey, how you doing? Getting to know residents, not misusing or abusing their authority or attempting to over police a community. So you can't say that Black Lives Matter when people don't see a presence from a safety perspective in their neighborhoods. And so that's another issue that I'm going to be working very, very hard to ensure that is funded here in the city of Philadelphia.
And Councilmember, you had mentioned the neighborhood initiative. That is rather a singular achievement, given not just that you were able to get it done, but during the pandemic, this was able to happen. And that's going to have a huge effect and a ripple effect throughout the city as that project's being built and beyond. So the last thing I'd like to ask you is about funding. We're going to have, and it's already started, the American Recovery Plan funds from Washington coming into Philadelphia. And it's very hard to account for every dollar. I understand that as a council member, but in the grand scheme of things, where would you like to see that money spent? And I know there's 100 different answers for that, but is it more of we have to fill gaps or we have to make investments for the future? And, what are some of those things if that's what we're talking about?
So we have to find a way, and this is what I'm also unapologetic about, to ensure that the businesses that are going to benefit from doing business with this, it should be, I think when we add up the entire pot of all of the federal dollars that have come to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and to the city, I think it's it's about $5 trillion. Don't quote me on that number, but I was just talking with Congressman Dwight Evans this evening about some other issues. And I think that was the number he mentioned to me. It's not either or, it is and. Public safety is extremely important. But so I also wear another hat. I'm the board chair for the Delaware River Port Authority. I think I was appointed by Governor Wolf in February and/or March. Transportation and safety is extremely important. That infrastructure is important. Our aging, antiquated, outdated, environmentally unsafe public schools, they need to be, we need environmental remediation. Many of them I don't want to remediate. I want to knock them down and build them, over again. We can think of, I was down the port not long ago with Jerry Sweeney, who is the chair of the Philly port. Listen, $15 billion total economic impact on the city of Philadelphia of marine cargo that is generated for Pennsylvania in 19. Listen, 10,341 jobs generated there. And listen to the salaries. Entry level, $41,000. That's the longshoremen. The Teamsters starting at $40,000. Those jobs, ILA, you can get up to $90,000. The Teamsters, you can get up to $70,000. Those are jobs, listen, that don't require a college degree. Don't require a college degree. but they put people on a path to self-sufficiency. You want to reduce gun violence. You want to reduce the number of homicides in the city of Philadelphia. Put people on a path to self-sufficiency where they can earn a living wage, take care of their own families, pay for their own health care, have their own homes, have their own retirement security, take their families on vacation. That kind of self-sufficiency, that's what we have to be working towards in the city of Philadelphia. So that's workforce development. That's being inclusive. That's being inclusive as it relates to Black-owned businesses. You can't tell me that Black Lives Matter, and then we look at the number of Black-owned firms that get an opportunity to do business, and there's just this dismal number. So it's a whole lot of work. It's public safety, it's SEPTA, the Delaware River Port Authority. It's all of those entities sort of working together, thinking about our economy, not just for Philadelphia, but regionally. And how do we get more people to want to come here, startups to start here, be innovative, but do it in a way that gives room and access to opportunity for all people. And so I think you're going to see over at the Navy Yard. I'm thinking about Mosaic. I'm giddy about Mosaic because she's from the Northwest. So I'm really, Leslie, I'm really excited about Mosaic. And I'm thinking about other opportunities for women-owned firms, disabled, veteran, owned firm. All of those things have to be a part of us crafting the design of the programs that are going to be funded. And let me say this to you as well. You heard me mention this. Despite the high amount of poverty that we have in the city of Philadelphia, I call them our Philadelphia stats, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was one stat that we had, Larry and Denise, that no matter what was happening in our city, it was a reality that everybody would say, darn it, how does Philadelphia do this? We had one of the highest rates of home ownership, particularly amongst Black and brown people, amongst all major cities in the nation. Guess what? That's changed. We're almost equal now. 50-50 with renters and homeowners. We need to make sure. I believe that housing is a human right, but I also believe this. The only people I want renting a property are the people who are like a friend of mine who every time I try to get her to buy a house in my district, she always tell me, Sherelle, I'm never shoveling snow or sweeping leaves. I'm never doing anything like that ever again. I don't want that responsibility. Well, those are the only people I want renting. I want the access to the opportunity to build generational wealth. And in the Black community, like my family, raised by my grandparents who migrated from the South. They met and married in North Philadelphia, moved to Northwest Philadelphia, where my single teenage mother got pregnant with me at the age of 15. When they got here to Northwest Philadelphia, they became homeowners, right? They became homeowners. There's a certain amount of dignity and pride that goes into ownership. And I am going to be relentless about ensuring that people get access to that opportunity. And the only people who are renting are the people who truly choose to rent. Okay, so rental assistance is never going to be enough for me. Yes, I want people covered. I want people protected. I want people to have a roof over their head, but I'm not going to be satisfied until everyone has the opportunity to own like my grandparents did when they raised me.
Okay, I'd like to bring in Denise Clay Murray back here on WPPM 106.5.
Yes. Okay. First of all, Councilman, thank you for giving us so much of your time. And second of all, it would be an act of journalistic malpractice if I did not ask you about the 2023 mayor's race. There is a lot of buzz going around about who's going to take the shot at the big office on the second floor and who is not. And your name is one of the names that has come up in the it is possible category. Has that been something you've thought about? Is it something that you're entertaining at all? And if so, one of the provisions in the city charter when it comes to that particular office is that you have to resign to run. So when if you do decide to make that choice, do you have an idea of when you'll have a decision in your mind as to whether you're going to do it or not?
Denise, let me say this. So one, having served in local government and viewed myself as a public servant since the tender age of 17, when I began as an intern serving in the office of Councilwoman Marion Tasco in the 9th District, I'm proud of the body of work that I have developed, in the intergovernmental experience I've developed, in the leadership ability, in the collaboration, all of that skill set that I've been able to develop from working in the community, from working in Harrisburg and now in Philadelphia City Council, but delivering tangible results that people can see, touch, and feel. I am very proud of that, Denise, and it is humbling to hear folks mention me as a potential candidate for 2023. What I do want to say to you is, if in fact that is what does occur in the future, we will be prepared to compete in every way possible and imaginable. And we will be very proud to communicate our body of work and the results that we've been able to deliver for the people that we served. If in fact, Denise, that does happen in the future. I don't want to get in any ethical trouble here, Denise. I don't want anybody saying Sherelle declared something, Larry. You know how people take things and run from them. I haven't declared anything. I'm a proud member of City Council, representing the 9th District and a majority leader of City Council. And we're going to continue to doing the best that we can, working with my colleagues so that we can improve the quality of life for all people in the city of Philadelphia. And we're going to do it by making Philadelphia a safer, cleaner, economically viable city for all.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Councilwoman, for your time. We really appreciate it. And we really appreciate you connecting us with Vanessa and talking about both bills. So that way, when we're watching council on Thursday, or we're watching it next Thursday, we can see what happens with these bills and what this could mean for business owners here in the city, in addition to people who are planning events and want to make sure that they can have their event where they want to have their event without any complications.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you, Denise and Allison, so very much for having me. Vanessa Simpson, just want to say again, love and appreciate you. Thank you for not giving up on our city. Thank you for taking the risk to be just, sort of jump in the arena and become a small business owner in the city of Philadelphia and also an employer. I want you to stay busy because we want your tax dollars, Vanessa. At you and every other small business owners in the city, so that we can continue serving our people the best way we possibly can. Thank you all so much.
Thank
Thank you, Council Member.
Wow.
How about that?
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, it would have been an act of journalistic malpractice if I did not ask.
Right. And that was a great answer. That I think said a lot, actually.
It actually did. When you think about it, it did say a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It did. And the thing is, right now I'm working on something for City and State magazines, the Power 100 list. And there's like 6 council members that people are talking about as possible mayoral candidates. But there's this little thing in the city charter that says you have to resign to run. And both times that folks have tried to get that provision removed, it's failed. The voters haven't voted it up. But the thing is, it does make sense in a way, because if you're going to be a council person and you're running for mayor and yet you're still on council, you're basically trying to make your policies the law before you even get in office.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little bit shady.
Yeah. But it also is, I think, one of those major roadblocks for some candidates, because you have to think, well, if I'm going to take a shot at mayor, I have to give up my council job.
Right.
State representatives and state senators don't have to do that, or
Right.
Congress people for that matter, or really
Right.
anybody else. Just city government. So it's the kind of thing where you have to feel pretty confident.
Right. You've got to think long and hard, because you got to ask yourself, am I going to be able to keep a roof over my family's head while I do this?
Yep. Well, Denise, we want to thank Council Member Sherelle Parker and Vanessa Simpson for being with us tonight. We'd like to thank Allison working behind the scenes as always.
Yay, Allison!
Allison is wonderful. Denise, I want to thank you as always for everything. This has been Hall Monitor. We will be back next week. So have a good week, and look for our newsletter. That's going to be coming out this Friday.
Yes.